recording, and so
Okay. I'd like to call this special select board meeting to order on February 19th, 2026 at 5 o'clock. Additions and
can people online hear us?
Yes, we can. Loud and clear, Eric.
additions and deletions.
I'd like to add one if we could. Could we add a liquor license for our Pentangle class C, I believe, or class 3? We do it after the public forum.
Yep.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, citizens' comments.
I'm seeing none online.
Okay, then you folks are up.
Do I know this?
No? No. Okay, this is Hoyle Tanner presentation for the renovation of the main wastewater plant.
Thank you.
And if I could, before, does one of the board members want to say when the vote will happen?
Sure.
We're voting on this measure on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. You can pick up ballots, absentee ballots currently. We will have voting in person at Town Hall, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on that Tuesday. Because it is a bond, we are statutorily required to have it on a paper ballot, which is why we are voting on it on Tuesday instead of Saturday.
Okay.
Eric, you're going to be advancing the slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Is your mic green?
I just turned it on.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to go to the next slide? And one more click for me. So today we're here, Nicole Davis from Hoyle Tanner and Associates. Today I was just about to say, we're here from Hoyle Tanner. With me, I have Kirsten DiPietro, Warden, who is going to be speaking about the technical aspects of this project, and John Olin, who is a senior engineer for our team, and he'll be talking a little bit about the funding. So what we wanted to do was quickly introduce you to the site that the current wastewater treatment facility is on. Go ahead and click to the next slide. And then we wanted to give you just a quick background on the project itself. So the project was originally constructed in 1968, and there have been some upgrades along the way for this project, but there is substantial deterioration and aging infrastructure there. So we are looking to make some improvements. In 2023, we kicked off the preliminary engineering report process, where we studied the improvements that needed to be made at the facility. And then in 2025, we revisited that study, and we were able to make some research and investigation into some new technology that would be able to be implemented within that facility. Kirsten's going to talk a little bit about the aerobic granulated sludge process. So you're going to hear many times the word AGS, and that's what she's talking about along the way. But with that.
Yes, go ahead. Hi, my name's Kirsten DiPietro Warden. I'm the lead engineer for this wastewater upgrade project. I'm just going to bring you along our progression. So the slide you see here, this is the existing wastewater treatment facility. Can you click? Well, actually, yeah, click the next slide. So what you see here are structures that are going to remain in the upgrade and structures that are going to be demolished. The structures in green are going to be demolished. That's the headworks building, the aeration tank that has a sludge digester in the middle, the clarifiers, and the chlorine contact tank. What's going to remain is outlined in blue. Now, why this is significant is because that's the main part of your process. It is where all the biological treatment happens in the aeration tanks and the clarifiers, and then disinfection happens in the chlorine contact tanks. When we did our our preliminary engineering report, we assessed the existing conditions of the facility. And what we found is a lot of age-related deficiencies. We also found hydraulic deficiencies. So in order for your plant to meet the needs, meet your permit, the discharge permit for the next 20 years, we need to do significant upgrades to the biological process and to make sure that we can process the flow that is coming to the facility. You can go ahead to the next slide. So along those lines of aging infrastructure, what you see here is the headworks. The headworks is where raw wastewater comes into the plant. We have screening, that's an influent screen, and we have grit removal. This equipment was replaced just not too long ago, about 20 years ago in 2005, 2006. This environment in the headworks is very corrosive. Hydrogen sulfide gases and other sewer gases lead to the corrosion of all ferrous, anything metal. So what you see here is severe corrosion on the equipment. You see corrosion of the building structure itself, lighting, etc. So in the new upgrade, this entire building headworks will be demolished and a new one will be built. You can go to the next slide. This is the aeration tank, and there's severe steel corrosion that is happening. The image on the left is a structural beam that holds the divider steel wall between two trains. Right now, the operators cannot take the level down on one side to clean the tanks because of a potential for catastrophic failure of that wall. So they haven't been able to do the required maintenance that they need to do to maintain the aeration requirements for biological treatment, which is diminishing the treatment performance of this existing aeration tank. The image on the right-hand side is just concrete defects. It's literally falling apart. We can go to the next slide. These are the clarifiers. Again, the photo on the left shows concrete deficiencies, cracking, which could lead to catastrophic failure. And then on the left, you see a corrosion of steel components. These clarifiers are also not sized large enough for the peak hydraulic flows that the facility sees, which is a problem when you have an older collection system and you have, inflow and infiltration into the collection system. When you see these rain events happen, you get a large flow that comes to the plant. So these are not up to standards that is needed for the plant. You can go to the next slide. This is the chlorine contact tank. Again, this tank is undersized for the peak hydraulic flow. It doesn't meet the state standards for disinfection, which is chlorine contact with the wastewater for 30 minutes at a peak hydraulic flow. It is also it doesn't meet the standards for resilience against flooding. You can go to the next slide.
Is that the right music you chose? I can't remember what it's
The soundtrack.
This is the effluent pump station. This structure will stay, but what I want to emphasize here is that this station is to boost flows if the river is at flood stage. If you can imagine, say like during Irene, and I think this happens also when there are ice jams on the river, the receiving water level rises, it backs up into the plant. Because this whole site is surrounded by an Army Corps of Engineers berm to protect it against flooding, there needs to be a way to get that wastewater out of the plant. So this is historically how that has happened during a flood, like a high water level at the river. It was built back when the berm was built in 1976, 1975, 1976. So it is over 50 years old. There's one pump, and it is that old. And it's amazing that it still works. So you can go to the next slide. So the project need, aging infrastructure. I think I've demonstrated that there is a need there to replace this equipment that has corroded. It is at the end of its useful life. It doesn't meet design standards. It doesn't meet redundancy standards. That's a reliability issue for the plant. If any of those things were to fail, the plant would not be able to meet its discharge permit limits and would be in violation and would put out a diminished treated effluent to the Ottaquechee River. It could be that it's too high in nitrogen, too high in phosphorus. It could be that it's not disinfected. So that's aging infrastructure, flood resiliency. Like I said, we're in a floodplain. There is an Army Corps of Engineers berm around it, but making sure that that effluent pump station can boost flows out of the plant during elevated river levels is important so that the whole plant doesn't flood. Health and sanitation, again, if any one of those components were to fail, we would have undisinfected wastewater going out to the plant, out to the river, or it could affect the aquatic life in the river by too much what we call biological oxygen demand. It takes the oxygen away from the aquatic life in the river. And then for growth, for the town of Woodstock to be able to maintain its services, whether that is with restaurants, commercial businesses, if the town wanted to see a new brewery come into town, all of those things, by not having the infrastructure at your wastewater treatment facility that can effectively treat your wastewater, you could be in a situation where there's a moratorium on growth in the town. So those are the project needs. You can go to the next slide. So what Nicole had alluded to, we did an amendment to the preliminary engineering report to look at some alternatives, different biological treatment alternatives. And the one that was ended up being selected, recommended and approved by the board here is called aerobic granular sludge. And this is a newer technology here in the United States, but it's not new globally. This is a process that's been developed in Europe and has been implemented quite successfully in Europe and is starting to be implemented here in the United States. There's probably about, I would say, 30 to 40 installations. It is truly going to be the way of the future for biological treatment. So what is AGS? AGS is a granular of sludge that forms based on, I'm going to try not to get too much into the weeds here, but forms based on a longer detention time of your sludge. It just builds and it grows that granular sludge. So you are operating at a higher mixed liquor suspended solid. And by doing that, the cross section of the granule, you have the ability to have an aerobic zone on the outside where nitrification happens. The next layer in, which is the kind of like the purpley layer, is where denitrification happens. And then the inside, the anaerobic zone, is where phosphorus is removed. So you can have simultaneous nitrification, denitrification, and phosphorus removal all in one granular. And this can happen in one tank instead of having a conventional activated sludge processes where you have the aeration tanks. You might have anaerobic selectors ahead of them, the aeration tanks, and then you have clarifiers. So a much bigger footprint plant. This gets it down into one single reactor. It's a batch process. It's a fully sustained process. It grows on its own. There's nothing we add to it. We don't add chemical. This happens naturally by just giving the sludge the right conditions to grow. It's very resilient. It's very robust. It can handle shock loads from, say, a brewery, if the brewery were to come into town, or increased commercial businesses. It could handle, like, if septage were to be received as a revenue for the town. It is extremely robust and resilient to different shock loads or variations in the influent wastewater strength. It has very good settling because it is growing, it is dense, and so it settles like a rock. And that is, all of this happens, like I said, in one tank without the need for additional concrete structures and equipment. So just to tout its performance, it has those discrete layers, anaerobic, anoxic, and aerobic. It can do simultaneous nitrification and denitrification to less than 3 milligrams per liter of total nitrogen, which is phenomenal. And biological phosphorus removal without chemicals addition down to less than 1 milligram per liter. So these are some of the attributes. Actually, we can go to the next slide because there's more. Nope. Okay, that's fine. We'll talk about this. So this is a great example. At the public tour, we had the sample on the right. There is the existing sludge that the operator went to the aeration tanks, took a bucket, we put it out. That is what we call a mixed liquor. Okay, that is the existing sludge from the plant right now. The one on the left is the AGS sample, which we brought with us, or the manufacturer's representative brought with us. He had a little mixer in there and he had it all suspended for a while, but then he turned the air off. And that's what it settled to in a matter of seconds. The one on the right, the existing sludge sample, never settled. So that's the difference in the sludge types by growing it into these granulars. And that's how you get a more reliable biological process. It's more efficient. It's much more efficient. You can go to the next slide. So some of these attributes, we have it all in. We're going to do a batch cycle. You can adjust the batch sequencing and the cycle time based on your influent flow. So it's very adaptable. If it's low flow times or high flow times, we can adjust the cycle to match that. All of the treatment is happening in one reactor. So for our plant, we're going to have two because for redundancy, we'll have one and then another. It's 15 times the settling of the conventional activated sludge, which you saw just there in the sample. Of the two different kinds. It's self-sustaining, the biomass. You don't have to add chemicals to it. You don't have to do anything to it. You just let it grow. It's an enhanced, the top center, enhanced BNR, that's enhanced biological nutrient removal. That was nutrient removal being nitrogen and phosphorus without chemical addition. It's a very simple operation. Again, it's a batch process and it's not complicated for the operators to keep tabs on. It's not like they have to constantly adjust airflow rates or recycle rates or internal recycle rates. It's not a complicated process, whereas enhanced biological nutrient removal systems for conventional activated sludge are very complicated. They're very hard to operate. They're very hard to keep just right so that you're getting the treatment performance that you require for your permit. There we go. Again, minimal footprint. Like I said, everything's happening in one. So this process rose above others because it's a minimal footprint. The capital cost is smaller. We're not building as much concrete tankage. I've already talked about the operational simplicity, major energy savings because we're not having all these return recycles. The air requirements aren't the same as a conventional activated sludge process. And then installation costs because we're not putting in the physical equipment or the concrete tanks that are required for a conventional enhanced biological nutrient removal process. You can go to the next slide. So this is quickly this is a process flow diagram of what the new process will be. Starting on the left, raw wastewater comes in, it goes through our headworks where we'll have screening and grit removal. those are, if you will, I like to call them rags in our industry, but it is like all the large stuff that gets flushed down the toilet. We take that stuff out so it protects downstream equipment like pumps and other processes. So you don't have clogging. Those are solids. Those get disposed of in a landfill. After that, we're going to go into our influent pump station, and we'll have pre-equalization. We're going to have equalization so we can dampen those peak flows that come during a rain event, so that we can feed the reactors, the biological reactors, at a more constant flow rate. From there, we will pump up into our the two green boxes. There is the aerobic granular sludge. From there, we will flow through. We're going to change the disinfection at this plant from chemical-based disinfection to UV ultraviolet disinfection. And then partial flume is for flow measurement, and then out to the river. Solids are wasted out of the aerobic granular sludge tanks to sludge holding. And from there, that will be dewatered. We are proposing new dewatering facilities at the plant so that the town does not have to keep contract dewatering or contract with an outside firm to do their dewatering at this facility. And those solids then get shipped off site for beneficial reuse or landfill application. You can go to the next slide. This is a proposed site plan. I'm going to start at the lower left corner. Influent and the influent sewer runs up the driveway. We're going to put the new Headworks building right there. We'll intercept it there. Again, that's where we have screening, grit removal, pre-equalization, and influent pumping. From there, we're going to take a circuitous route around the existing infrastructure, and we'll pump over to our new AGS tanks, which will be located in the upper right corner of the site. There will be a process building in between that'll house blowers, pumps, controls. We are putting a backup chemical feed system in there. It is for assurance. If something is to go wrong, it's always a good idea to have a backup system if the biology requires it. From there, we will flow into the building to the left of that is the new UV disinfection building, and that will have plant water pumps as well. We reuse the disinfected water around the site so the town saves on their water bill, because there's many things that we can use that plant water for wash down purposes. It's not potable, but we can use it for cleaning purposes. We're leaving room in that building for future space for future tertiary with equipment or filters. And the reason is none of us have a crystal ball and know what the state of Vermont DEC is going to impose on discharge permits in the next 20 years. It could be possible that the town could receive a more stringent phosphorus limitation than what will be in their permit. While I said the AGS can get to about 1 milligram per liter without chemical, they might need an extra polishing component to get below that if that ever becomes down the line. So we're leaving space for it. We're not designing it now. We're not building it now, but we can just leave space in that building for that potential. What you see here is a system that can easily be replicated if the town grows to the point where they need more capacity at their plant and they need to request increase in discharge capacity from the state. Because we will be demolishing everything that's circled in blue with a crosshatch. Since we're demolishing all that frees up all that real estate on the site for just duplicating this whole process over there. And we could expand the capacity of the plant by 2 times by doing that. We're putting the new dewatering facilities in one of the existing bays in there's a 3-bay maintenance garage. And we're gonna retrofit one of those bays for the dewatering equipment. That's on the lower right-hand side. And then the operations building is going to be renovated for better use for the operators. Right now, the main office is in the laboratory. They eat their lunch in the laboratory where they are analyzing wastewater. That's not up to code. So we're renovating those spaces for them. Any questions on the site plan? Yes?
I have questions on everything. Start right back at the beginning. What precipitated the study that made it a new plant?
So typically, 20-year evaluations are a requirement in the facility's discharge permit. The state requires a facility to look at all their facilities, the plan, so make a plan. What needs to be fixed? What is deficient? How are you going to meet your discharge permit for the next 20 years?
State requirement, but as far as I understand, there's no state participation in this project. Is that correct?
I'm going to defer that question to later because John's going to go. Sure.
Where does this AGS come from?
So it grows naturally. We could take the sludge that
Is it something that you start the plant with some and then it grows?
we can,
Is it just you just wait for it to materialize?
you can do two things. You can wait for it to materialize, which is just aging it longer in the reactor, or we can seed the plant from another AGS facility. There's a facility that's about to go online in Saco, Maine. We could take sludge from them and seed it, or we can just let it grow. You can go to the next. Oh, sorry.
Don't know if this is the right time, just a couple questions more, not on the process part,
Mhm.
but on budget part.
We're getting to that. Yep.
And I don't mean budget on construction, I mean budget on maintenance and life cycles. So we'd love to just ask some questions at the right time for that.
Okay, I am not sure I am prepared to, I don't know if I can give you answers because I don't have that report on, at the tips of my fingers. So the preliminary engineering report amendment that we did, we looked at conventional activated sludge process. We looked at an SBR process and we looked at AGS. And part of that analysis of those alternatives are life cycle costs, where we assign or we estimate operational costs, electricity, consumption, chemical consumption, operator hours that would be needed for that process. We looked at it for each of those alternatives. We did life cycle cost analysis on that, and then we did a present worth analysis. So looking at taking those costs over 20 years and along with the capital cost, you get to a value. I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. They're in that report.
And I wouldn't expect, I don't understand, this is more of, hey, this is the process we're talking about.
Yeah.
The site and what's gonna happen there, so I realize this may be a little premature.
So, but I can tell you that the AGS alternative was the least cost alternative of the three.
I'm aware of this a little bit, with an SBR plant that I was responsible for 25 years ago.
Mhm.
So I'm interested in just knowing more of those costs, operational costs,
Mhm.
because I'm sure you've done your homework. It's safe, it's just a new process there that takes into account all these different pieces. And then ultimately, what's the operational cost, savings. And I'd also like to know just what, if the headworks has to be replaced, and it was replaced 20 years ago, will the new one need to be replaced in 20 years? And I assume that it would, unless something has happened as far as systems, piping, and there's something there that better protects it going forward. Because I'm just thinking about that relative to everybody up front and going, okay, already 20 years down the line, plan on X number of dollars
Absolutely.
going out.
Absolutely. The life cycle on a lot of this equipment is about a 20-year horizon.
Thank you, appreciate your.
No, is the presentation that she's talking about that she gave, analyzing all three of them. The town does have recorded and they have it on their YouTube channel, so we can send you the link if you're interested
You
in
know what,
some
I
of that
absolutely
stuff too.
trust everybody. in the-
Okay.
No, but I just meant if you were
And-
interested in those numbers, they were
Yeah.
presented in that presentation.
And those preliminary engineering reports are public. They're on, I'm not sure if they're on your website, but they're definitely on the state of Vermont DEC's.
So thank you, appreciate.
Yep.
All the information.
There is a Ben Polly online as his hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, do it, so. Yeah, sorry.
Ben Polly?
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple questions. Thank you for the presentation. This is great. I see in the old infrastructure had the kind of open aeration tank, and it looks like all the new infrastructure seems to be enclosed. Am I reading that correct? The real question I have is, what are the kind of odor implications for surrounding properties with this new system? If it is indeed all kind of self-enclosed, just curious about that.
The AGS tanks are not enclosed. On this particular slide, the buildings that have roofs that are enclosed are in the darker green, and the new tanks are open to the atmosphere. The AGS tanks open to the atmosphere. So the sludge holding tanks right now are also open to the atmosphere. There should be no change from the existing process as far as odors go. If anything, it will probably be improved, but I can't qualify that. That's about as much as I can say. We do not anticipate that odors will be any different or worse than what is now at the plant, or the odors that are.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is the Army Corps of Engineering berm, does that go under regular testing and maintenance to kind of keep a certain standard of protection for the plant?
So I'm just going to qualify, the berm was built by the Army Corps of Engineers back in the 70s, but it is owned by the town. And we are not doing anything to the berm. We're not putting out any new pipes through it. As far as we know, the berm structural integrity is intact.
If I may interrupt for a second, I think it might be best if we let Totina finish the whole presentation, and then ask questions at the end, if that's okay with everyone, so we get through the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. I'm just a couple of slides here on our proposed buildings. We, at this point, we made a 30% design submission to the town at the end of the year in December. And we have some 3D renderings of some of the buildings. We are advancing on our next submission, which will be in April, but this is just a snapshot of what some of these buildings look like. And this is the new Headworks building, and it might be a little hard to see what's going on there because there's below grade and above grade. But I think the thing to note here is we are protecting we are designing these to be protected against the 500-year flood event if one were to hit Woodstock. And there are design standards through the state of Vermont that you need to treat up to the 100-year flood elevation. So you will have treated effluent up to that point, and you protect up to the 500-year. And so you'll see a lot of stairs up into some of these buildings, and that is a foot above the 500-year flood elevation. You can go to the next slide. This is what the new AGS tanks will look like with the biological process building in between. Again, you'll see it is raised up. The tops of these walls are higher than the 500-year flood elevation. So we will be treating wastewater even in a flood. Not much to see here, but this is the new ultraviolet disinfection building. Again, we're walking up into it, right? And with that, am I still going?
Yeah, I'm on the next.
You're on the next slide. I'm gonna hand over to John Olin.
We can go next.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. John Owen here to talk about the funding portion of that. It was a great presentation, Kirsten. I always get excited to hear more about AGS and to go home and tell my wife and my family and my friends all about it. So hopefully you do the same. I want to point out to the question about operations. Part of the step one, that preliminary engineering report, we work really closely with the operators, the ones who are going to be taking over. It's not just about the cost, it's about their day-to-day life, how they perform their jobs. And Kirsten does a great job of working with the operators to make sure they're happy with what they're going to be having to manage afterwards for the next 30 years. So we've completed step one, preliminary engineering report, and you'll see it come up as PER a lot. That's our short term for it. We've begun the funding agency coordination and the applications. We had the public tour in November of 2025. Hopefully, if some of you were there, it was a great tour. It was a great day out there. The video is, or not the, is the video, or not the video? The video is not posted to the website, but not yet. You saw it come up in here in some of the pictures right before the slide. So the check boxes here. So now we've completed the pre-procurement of the biological process. That's the AGS. And 30% design has been completed and submitted. We're doing all this with the CWSRF program. So that's the state agency for clean water, state revolving fund. And they work hand in hand with us through the design, through these deliverables here. So the next deliverable coming up in April of 26 is the 60% design with final in October. And then bid and construction phase, I'll skip to that last box. Bid phase would start in ideally November of 2026 with construction beginning in 2027. And we anticipate a 2-year construction period. So finishing off by December of 28. And let me jump one box up. So the bond vote, March 3rd. So in a couple of weeks, this is what we're here to do. We're here to help you all understand the project and hopefully garner support for the project and see a passing bond vote. So jump over to the next slide. Okay, so let me do that actually. Let's go one more slide. We're gonna go one up and then we're gonna come one back. All right, so I want to talk about this. So this is what you'll see on the ballot. So this is the warrant article. And I want to put it on the screen. I'm not going to read this verbatim. Nobody wants to hear that. So, but I do want you to see it. But I will talk to, I want to point out that all registered voters may vote on this project. So whether you're on system or off system, you're eligible to vote on it being a town project. A positive vote for us or for this project is critical to maintain the current grant and loan funding that's in place and to see the successful completion of the project. I want to point out, like as Kirsten mentioned earlier, really doing nothing is not an option. To maintain the plant in operation, there are infrastructure improvements that are going to have to be done. The PER study, pointing back to that, looked at different alternatives. It looked at different scenarios of whether you do some repairs, whether you do this type of process or the AGS process. And looking at those holistically and thinking about over the term of a 30-year period, the cost benefit and the ability for the town to control its own destiny in the future is most successful with the alternative that we presented here tonight. So next slide. Oh, yeah, we're going to go back a slide. Thanks, Eric. You already knew what I was doing. All right, yeah, funding. So it's a big number. $34 million does not come lightly to us. We understand that. So what we do when we work with our clients, we're really working to do our best to secure as much state and federal funding to offset the costs to the town. It is a long-term investment. These capital projects come up. They come up in communities across Vermont, communities across New England, across the United States. So how do we do this? So the first step is getting a positive town vote. That implies readiness. That helps us secure more funding. Some of the grants that we're going to talk about down below require that readiness in order to move forward. We already do have CWSRF loan funding for the engineering services that we're performing now, and we're working on securing that for construction loan. That's a fantastic interest rate. The 2% interest rate can't be beat. And that allows the long-term repayment to be secured with the CWSRF program. The CDS STAG grant. So that's something that is currently, we just recently were awarded that. So that's congressional directed spending. So yeah, so for, used to have that ugly term earmark, but that is money that Congress has allocated towards specifically this project, which is no small feat to have won that during this time period, competing against projects across the nation. We were able to help the town secure, along with Harry Falconer and the Regional Planning Commission, who did a great job putting that application together, $1 million towards the project. We are currently pursuing, and we're working with Abby on this, for an EDA disaster supplemental grant, which ranges from $2 million to $20 million. These are costs that would offset on that $34 million. The $1 million itself that's not reflected in that cost. We are pursuing, when you pursue a bond vote, you pursue for the entire cost of the project. And these are things that we're trying to do to offset the impacts to the community over time. And then there's the CWSRF PC grant, the pollution control grant. And that has a capacity up to $3 million. It will say that it's been, that the coffers are pretty low on that. So to anticipate the full $3 million, it's hard to predict that. So we'll just continue to monitor, continue to work with the state, and do our best to secure as much as possible for the town. All right, so the middle bullet, local funding, so in reserves. And this is where town reserves are managed and approved by the select. So there's nothing committed along with $34 million, but on an annual basis, the way the select board has the opportunity to review and make decisions around that. Local option tax revenues are another source that we've been working with the town. These are like sensitivity checks, like how much, if it's applied into the loan repayment structure, can help reduce user rates or the impact to the community. So we work with them through these different options. Every year, some of these will change as an option for the community. So you assess it based on a number of scenarios, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then user rate. So this is typically how a wastewater system, a wastewater revenue is most controlled through the user rates themselves. Now, I point out in that first bullet that we are anticipating an increase of approximately 50% over the next 5 years. And this increase does account for routine inflation and general operating costs, so the change in the plant. What we've done with the town is we developed a custom tool for the town of Woodstock, that allows us to look at the 30-year scenario. So as different factors come into play, and some of these factors are outside of our control, such as like external costs, like the solids disposal costs, if those are increased, if chemical costs are increased. But then there are some that are more positive, right? So growth is a significant opportunity for spreading out the costs of a project like this, a large project, to more users. And there's real benefit to that. And I'm not saying that growth has to be the model for Woodstock, but what we want to do is look at, well, what if? So we typically are conservative. When we work with a town towards loan repayment, we say, you can't count on that, right? You can't count on growth. So we keep it up. But if it does, this is where you can see it improve. So when I say 50% over 5 years is what the users can expect in a user rate increase, the reason I can't pin that number down is because if in year 2, if there are some changes, if year 3, there are some changes, that number will vary year to year. And the town, working with Hoyle Tanner, we've set up a good number of scenarios, a good outlook into what can help and can improve, and we'll continue to look on a year-to-year basis to make sure that it's the best it can be for its users. Okay, I think we'll go 2 slides ahead now. That song. Okay, so we're to the question slide. So in closing, I just want to point out a couple of things. We do have a project website, Woodstock, Maine wwtf.com. And I'm going to finish with just a statement from the website that I can find as a good kind of closing statement on behalf of the project. This investment benefits the entire community by protecting the water quality of the Ottaquiche River, supporting housing and economic growth, and ensuring reliable infrastructure for decades to come. That's my closing statement on the project, and we will open up to questions and do our best to respond. Eric, do you want to lead?
Yeah, if you have a question, you please come up to the chair, say your name, turn the microphone on so we can hear you online as well, and the recording can hear you as well.
Just real quick. Steve Fulkerson, West Woodstock, 542 West Woodstock Road, in the town. Real quickly, you touched on the projected growth capacity. What is the design capacity that it is now, and what the growth capacity is? I mean, the offset, I don't know if it's, you want to do it in gallons or what, but would love to know what that might be.
Yep. So the capacity, the permitted capacity of the plant is 450,000 gallons. It's operating about 50% of that right now.
450,000.
Gallons per day. And it's changing, but the last time we looked at it, the plant is at about half that capacity. So what is that? What does that mean? There's a certain threshold you don't want to go over 80% of your capacity. I think, Eric, I think a couple years ago, I had anticipated that could translate to about 500 residential units.
Good, great.
Yeah.
So, okay. That's really all.
Okay.
Those questions?
Ben Pauly had his hand up. And yes.
All right, thank you. Yes, I'm sorry about earlier, but I'll ask, that was one of my questions, was the capacity, so thank you for that. The other one is just curious on that flood level again. The berm that is there, is that above or below the 500-year flood level? And do you calculate that into how you design the buildings, or are you kind of ignoring that and just looking at the base flood elevation to generate that resiliency at the 500-year floodplain?
The top of the berm is actually below the 500-year flood elevation. I believe it is built to the 100-year flood elevation. We are designing all of the structures above, about a foot above the 500-year elevation. I'm trying to find that in my basis of design real quick, but I'm not sure if I can get to this.
And, when we talk flood elevations, like as most folks know by now, like we've seen a change, right? So flood elevation is relative to, recent years and how often events have happened. So they do change over time. USGS regression equations take that into account. So yeah, currently the berm is 100-year, but this design allows it to go further and protect the buildings and maintain the plant in operation under those higher flow events.
Yep. So the 500-year flood elevation, I'm just going to round up it's 677.98 feet. So let's call it 678. That's the 500-year flood elevation. And the top of the berm is at 677 feet above. We are like I said, we're designing everything to be a foot above that.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then one other question, I was curious if this new system generates any like byproducts of heat. I don't know if it's looked at if it can generate enough to heat the buildings of the plant, or if that's a thing, if it's kind of can be if you can capture heat from this system at all in any way to distribute.
So all wastewater generates heat, and this is not part of the project, but could be a future add-on. You can generate heat from the effluent and send the effluent through heat exchangers and use that to heat the remaining, like heat your buildings. It could be your boiler plant, if you will. That has not been part of this design. It's a considerable cost, considerable cost. And it's your plant is small. We've designed that for a much larger facility up in South Burlington where you have the flow rates and the volume of wastewater, treated wastewater to be able to run through your heat exchangers. So the demand for the heat exchangers is quite a bit, and this plant is not small enough. The other thing is that this is a batch process, so there will be times where there is no effluent flow, like as it's going through its different cycles. So it's not set up well for effluent heat recovery.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Other questions?
Not seeing any online.
Okay.
Can I just make some comments? I want to thank Hoyle Tanner for being here. I wanted to highlight something John said. As a lot of you know, the select board has voted to prioritize adding housing to the town. It's part of why Abby has joined us full time. But if you look especially at the calculations for sewer users' payment to this, it could be deeply impacted by how many units and connections we're going to add. So it's just another reason for us to keep pushing forward and moving forward for more housing and more connections here. Thanks.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask.
Come on up. You gotta press the red button and just state your name for the record, please.
Charles Taylor, 301 Austin Road. So we have a discharge rate of 450,000 gallons per day, that state NPDS permit. So that's what we can do. And we're currently at 50% capacity. So 80% is kind of our safe ceiling, if you will. So we have 30% growth rate. And maybe I should see a spec sheet at some point, but given that we have 30%, given the town's thought process on housing, et cetera, how long would this BNR system last before technology kicks in to go to an ENR system? And leave it at that. Any idea?
Turn on the mic. This technology is, I think, going to be the way of the future. And I think you're going to start to see facilities across the United States, across New England, transition to this. So let me just back up. So you have a discharge permit. Getting an increase in capacity from the state of Vermont is highly unlikely for more capacity. It will require plants to put out a cleaner effluent. The water quality standards, surface water quality standards, are not going to backslide. So therefore, the amount you put into the loading you put into the rivers or streams, receiving streams, will need to be treated to a higher level.
It's Clean Water Act requires you
Is it Clean Water Act?
Yeah.
So we're going to have to treat to higher standards with the infrastructure we have. Your plant, I mean, we're opening up a whole nother side of it, but many plants, if you can imagine, are built in these small little postage size areas next to a river within a floodplain, right?
Primary and tertiary and done.
And done. So I see plants converting to this technology. You will be the first plant in the state of Vermont to adopt this technology. The second in New England, but not by no means. It's not an experiment. These are being implemented across the country because it is the most efficient way to get more out of your treatment process.
So obviously, there's no open lagoon in this climate, right?
There are many lagoons in the state of Vermont.
See, but so from back to where I was going with growth, so for growth, will this plant require upgrades in the next 15 years?
I think do a recap. I think he came in late, so.
Oh, okay. No.
Why the capacities.
So wastewater treatment facilities are a harsh environment, and equipment wears out very rapidly without routine maintenance and that without upkeep from the operators. The expected life in a headworks, where it's a corrosive environment with hydrogen sulfide gases, sewer gases, the grit, that equipment wears out in 20 years. I mean, the headworks that was installed in 2005 is falling apart now. Here we are 20 years later. So the expected life on certain pieces of equipment, on pumps, on headworks equipment, the mechanical parts are typically refurbished every 20 years. Every 20 years. And that is why your question before is what's dictating why did we start looking into this? The state requires you to do a 20-year eval. It's in your discharge permit every 20 years because it is the harshest environment out there. I mean, things literally corrode and fall apart. Hopefully the town is putting aside reserves to replace or equipment as they go. If a pump wears out, if the valve wears out, things that last a longer time, the concrete in those tanks will last over 50 years. Pipes in the ground should last over 50 years. There are certain components that have a much longer life expectancy than others. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
No, I get it. I'm thinking more 15 years down the road in our town.
So,
Kirsten, if I might, yeah. So right now, I think if I could summarize, the issue right now is not capacity. We have room to add more capacity. We also have room in the design to add capacity to the plant as the upgrades and the renovations dictate, should we need to in the future.
I do want to say though, your existing treatment process will not be able to meet its discharge permit with increased organic loading.
Can you real quickly just talk about the discharge permit cycles?
The discharge permit cycles are a 5-year cycle. The state is a little bit behind on that renewal process. This facility has not seen their new permit, and it won't come until we're heading into like construction. They'll issue a new permit. We have been in communication with them about what is going to change on that permit. You're getting a new phosphorus limitation with the new permit. So that will require, at a minimum, chemical addition if nothing is done. Yep.
Ben Polly has a question again.
Ben?
All right, thank you. I just want to make sure I understood that comment correctly. You mentioned that added capacity from now until when this plant is completed in 2028. We don't have the capacity right now to add on to it with the current system. Did I understand that correctly, or?
I'm saying, like, I guess I'm going to walk back what I said. You cannot, the existing facility, the existing biological treatment process, the existing tankage would not be able to handle its full 80% of organic loading, not hydraulic capacity, but organic loading. If you were to put all of that load coming from increased housing on the existing aeration tanks, it would not meet the permit. That's what I'm saying.
So our limit to growth currently in the next 2 years, 2.5 years until this is built is essentially up to the 80%? Is that?
I'm not saying there's a limit to your growth in the next 2 or 3 years. Okay. I'm saying, like, if you were not to do an upgrade for 20 years, I guess that's what I'm saying.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John?
Liquor license.
While we have people here, do you want to quickly just go over town meeting one last time? We have 15 people online and in person, maybe.
Going to do another announcement about town meeting. So for those that don't know, and maybe missed the first announcement we made at the beginning of the meeting, town meeting is coming up. Please say the dates. Woodstock votes 2 ways over 2 days. We vote in person on Saturday, February 28th at 10 a.m. downstairs at Town Hall. That will be on Articles 1 through 8. That covers the town budget, the water budget, the sewer budget, and a few other articles. Then we vote via ballot on Tuesday, March 3rd. On the remaining articles, which I think 9 through 25. This includes special articles that are fundraising for local organizations. This will include the wastewater treatment bond because it's statutorily required to be on that ballot. It will also include elected officials, and the school district ballot will also be on Tuesday, as is required by law. I encourage all of you, if you can, to come on Saturday. There's always a lot of really healthy discussion. We'll cover what goes into the budget process, and you are free to ask a lot of questions. Trying to think what else we will have. We're working on having childcare for kids 4 and up through Change the World Kids, which is an amazing organization. Yeah, hope to see you there.
Yes.
Okay, we have a first-class restaurant bar license for Pentangle. I'm looking for motion, as long as the state has done their job of reviewing this.
I will make a motion under the assumption that the state has done due diligence for this liquor license to permit this liquor license to Pentangle Arts Council.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Third class one there as well.
That's why.
Third class.
Yeah, I got it. Third class.
Oh.
Okay. All right, I'd like to have a motion for the third class license for Pentangle.
I will make a motion to accept this third class license, assuming the state has done due diligence in support of this license to grant to Pentangle Arts Council.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.